2025 has filled with wild, creepy, and downright insane zombie survival games, and I've handpicked 20 upcoming zombie games that are hyped insanely in our gaming community. So let's see if they're worth the hype. This game takes you to old Europe during a time when a strange disease has ruined everything. The world is dark, dangerous, and full of fighting. Hunger is a first-person shooter mixed with horror and role-playing, where you explore, fight, and try to survive. The game wants to give you both slow, careful fighting and fast action. You can use guns or swords, make your own character, and choose how you play. It also has quests, skills to unlock, and a big world to explore. The world looks great and feels scary in a good way. The combat feels strong and fun. It's not just button mashing, you have to think a little. But here's the thing, the game can be a bit hard to get into. The systems are deep, maybe too much for people who just want something simple. Some parts of the map also feel kind of empty, and the story doesn't hit as hard as it could. Hunger is creative and different, and if you enjoy games with a dark vibe and deep combat, it's worth trying. But if you want something light or easy, it might not be for you. Alright, from plague and swords, now we jump into crazy monsters and explosions with John Carpenter's Toxic Commando. And oh boy, this one's wild. John Carpenter's Toxic Commando is a first-person shooter where you and your friends fight waves of zombies in a world full of chaos. It's inspired by 1980s action and horror movies, trying to mix jokes with intense shooting. The game promises fast-paced action where you play as different characters with unique weapons and powers. It's all about teamwork and non-stop zombie killing with a funny old-school horror style. On paper, that sounds awesome. Playing it with friends is fun for a while, but the gameplay gets boring quickly. It's mostly just wave after wave of the same stuff, and there's not a lot of variety. The jokes don't always land and can feel a bit awkward. Visually it's fine, but nothing new or exciting. Toxic Commando is good if you just want to hang out with friends and shoot zombies for a couple of hours. But don't expect anything special or memorable. It's all surface level fun, nothing deeper. Let's go from crazy zombie action to something more colourful and silly, Plants vs. Zombies 3. Plants vs. Zombies 3 brings back the classic garden defense where you place plants to stop zombies. It's a mobile game with new graphics and updated features, but still keeps that goofy charm. It promises to be a fun, casual tower defense game with new plants, new zombies, and a fresh look. It's free to play and meant for quick, on-the-go fun. While the gameplay is still enjoyable, the biggest issue is how the game handles money. It constantly pushes you to make in-app purchases, and progress can feel really slow unless you pay. That sucks the fun out of it. Also, the game needs internet all the time, and that's annoying too. Long-time fans might feel a bit disappointed. It still has its charm and is great for short sessions, but it's not as player-friendly as the earlier games. It's more of a money trap now. Now from the bright world of cartoon zombies, we step into something dark and terrifying. Ill is a first-person horror game that throws you into a creepy world filled with disgusting monsters and terrifying places. It wants to scare you with realistic graphics and a slow, creepy vibe. The game promises a full horror experience with scary sounds, dark stories, and tough survival gameplay. It's about finding resources, solving puzzles, and trying to stay alive in a world that clearly wants you dead. The graphics are insane, like really detailed, and the horror atmosphere is strong. But the game moves slowly. The character feels heavy and combat is clunky. That's realistic, sure, but sometimes it just feels annoying. Also, the story is slow to start, so you need patience to get into it. Ill is not for everyone. It's not fast or easy, but it is scary. If you love horror and don't mind slow pacing, it's worth trying. But if you just want action or quick fun, skip this one. Next up, we head back to the arcades with the remake of The House of the Dead 2. Let's see if it still holds up. This one takes us back to the late 90s arcade era. The House of the Dead 2 remake is a modern version of the classic rail shooter where you blast zombies while the game moves you along the path. It's meant to be a fast, simple, and bloody ride. It promises upgraded visuals, smoother controls, and the same fun arcade feel. It's supposed to bring that nostalgic zombie blasting fun with a fresh coat of paint. The remake does a decent job with visuals, but it doesn't really do anything more than that. The animations feel stiff, voice acting is still bad, which some fans might enjoy ironically, and the gameplay feels stuck in the past. There's not much replay value unless you're really into high scores. Also, the lack of polishing controls on newer platforms makes the shooting feel off sometimes. It's fun for a quick nostalgia trip, but not something you'll play for long. A missed opportunity to fully modernize a cult classic. Now let's leave behind the arcade guns and head into the muddy, brutal world of Blight Survival. Blight Survival is a third-person co-op game set in a dark medieval world during a deadly plague. It mixes brutal sword combat with stealth and horror, where you and your friends try to survive a cursed land full of infected creatures and hostile humans. It promises deep, gritty melee combat, stealth gameplay, and RPG elements like gear upgrades and team strategy. The mix of medieval fighting with horror and disease is what makes it stand out. The world design is impressive, dark, heavy, and atmospheric. Combat feels weighty, especially with swords and shields, but the controls need more work. Sometimes movement feels slow and animations don't always respond right. The gameplay loop can also get repetitive after a while, and if you're playing solo, the fun drops a lot. This game is clearly built for co-op. Blight Survival has a lot of potential, and it already looks better than most early access games, but it still feels rough around the edges and needs more polish to reach its full potential. Next up, let's check out something even more intense: Dying Light: The Beast. Dying Light. The Beast is an upcoming chapter in the Dying Light series. This time, it looks like the story focuses more on a brutal, monster-like transformation and survival in a dying world full of infected creatures. There's not a lot of official info, but early gameplay clips and previews suggest a darker, more violent experience. It promises faster movement, better combat, and more freedom. The Beast theme sounds like you'll get powers or go through some transformation. If done right, this could make the game more intense and fresh. But here's the truth: Techland hasn't shown much. It's hard to trust promises when they haven't even cleared the issues from Dying Light 2. That game launched with bugs, weak story, and bad balancing. If the Beast doesn't fix those problems and just adds more monsters, it's not going to work. Plus, people are still waiting for better co-op fixes and smoother combat. This could be the comeback the series needs, or it could just be another update with a fancy name. Hard to say until we get real gameplay. Now let's move from monsters to another emotional roller coaster: The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered for PC. The Last of Us Part 2 is one of the most talked about games in recent years, and the remastered PC version brings it to a whole new group of players. It's a brutal story about revenge, trauma, and survival in a post-apocalyptic world. You play as Ellie, going through emotional highs and lows while fighting infected and human enemies. It promises improved graphics, better performance, and bonus content like No Return, a roguelike survival mode. The PC version is supposed to make everything smoother and more detailed, and honestly, it looks beautiful and plays well on good hardware. The combat is tight, animations are top tier, and the world feels real. But the main issue is the story. People either love it or hate it. The pacing is slow, and some choices in the story feel forced. Many fans feel Joel's arc was handled poorly. And if you already played this on console, the remaster doesn't really add enough to buy it again unless you're a huge fan. This game is still one of the best in terms of visuals and sound, but emotionally it's heavy and not for everyone. Some people will walk away impressed, others will walk away angry. Now we switch gears from serious storytelling to pure survival chaos in Into the Dead: Our Darkest Days. Into the Dead: Our Darkest Days is a side-scrolling zombie survival game set in 1980s Texas. You lead a group of survivors trying to escape a zombie outbreak while managing supplies, making tough choices, and avoiding the undead. It promises deep strategy, emotional choices, and a tense atmosphere. You're not just shooting zombies, you're planning routes, finding food, and making sure your team survives day by day. And it actually does a good job. The 2.5D art style looks cool, the mood is intense, and every decision feels important. But the pacing is slow, and it can feel more like managing a to-do list than playing a game sometimes. If you like action, you'll probably get bored. Also, some mechanics are confusing at first, and there's a bit of trial and error. This game is more about survival thinking than zombie killing. If you're into slow, emotional survival games, you'll like it. If not, it might feel like homework. Next up, we go from Texas survival to a familiar name getting a fresh coat of paint: Days Gone Remastered. Days Gone Remastered brings back the biker zombie survival game with better visuals, improved performance, and a few gameplay tweaks. You play as Deacon St. John, a drifter riding through a world full of infected, trying to survive while looking for answers and protecting the people he cares about. It promises a more polished version of the original game with faster load times, smoother graphics, and maybe fewer bugs. The story is emotional, the open world has variety, and the bike upgrade system is still fun. But here's the thing: this remaster doesn't really fix what people had problems with. The game still has pacing issues, repetitive missions, and sometimes clunky controls. It looks better, sure, but it still feels like the same game from 2019. And for people who already finished the original, there's not enough new content to make it feel fresh. It's great for newcomers, but if you didn't like it the first time, this version won't change your mind. Now let's ride into another zombie apocalypse, this time with a more tactical twist in State of Decay 3. State of Decay 3 is the next big entry in the zombie survival series by Undead Labs. It's supposed to offer better graphics, deeper survival systems, and smarter AI, making it more intense and realistic. You manage a community of survivors, build bases, and try to survive in a dangerous world full of undead threats. It promises a much more polished experience than the last games. The trailers tease infected animals, harsh environments, and more emotion-driven moments. On paper, this sounds like the evolution fans were waiting for. But here's the problem. It's been in development for years, and there's still no solid release date or full gameplay footage. People are getting tired of waiting, and with all the silence, it's hard to know if the game is even close to ready. State of Decay 2 launched buggy and rough. If they don't completely rebuild the systems and make the world more alive and less robotic, this one could fall flat again. If it delivers what it promises, it could be a serious survival masterpiece. But right now, it feels more like a mystery than a game. Speaking of survival and mystery, let's dive into non-stop chaos with Killing Floor 3. Killing Floor 3 is the latest in the fast-paced co-op shooter series known for crazy weapons, bloody action, and waves of terrifying enemies. It's all about teaming up with friends, fighting off mutant creatures, and upgrading gear between rounds. It promises upgraded graphics, more brutal combat, and a darker setting with a stronger story focus. It also plans to add more depth to its systems without losing the fast, fun style fans love. Gameplay-wise, it looks like a solid step forward. The guns feel heavy, the enemies are scarier, and the new setting feels grittier. But there's one big issue. Microtransactions. Early reports say the game might include paid cosmetics and possibly even unlocks tied to real money. That's a red flag for many players. The series always felt like a straight-up honest shooter. If they start locking content behind a paywall, it could ruin that trust. It still looks like a blast to play, especially with friends. But if they get greedy with the business model, that fun won't last. Let's now head into something very different. A stealthy survival horror set in a ruined city. Welcome to Nakwon Last Paradise. Nakwon Last Paradise is a third-person stealth survival game set in a destroyed city taken over by zombies. Unlike most zombie games, this one puts you in the shoes of regular citizens with no superpowers, no crazy weapons, just your brain and basic tools. The goal? Survive, sneak around, collect supplies, and escape without getting caught. It promises a more grounded experience. No overpowered combat or constant shooting. You're vulnerable, and that fear is the point. There's also a multiplayer aspect where you can run into other players trying to survive, which adds tension and unpredictability. The idea is great. A stealth-based survival game with realistic movement and no hand-holding could be really refreshing. But the early gameplay clips show some stiff animations, average graphics, and not so smooth mechanics. If it feels clunky or repetitive, it could lose players fast. Also, being too realistic can sometimes make the game feel slow and frustrating, especially if progress is wiped out quickly. Still, it's one of the more unique zombie games this year. If they polish the mechanics and give players more ways to survive creatively, it could be something special. Now, from modern zombie stealth to a wild blend of retro vibes and zombie madness, here comes Showa American Story. Showa American Story is one of the weirdest and most interesting games coming this year. It's set in an alternate version of 1980s America, taken over by Japanese culture and zombies. Yeah, that's the setup. You play as a girl who wakes up from the dead and goes on a journey across this bizarre, broken world full of crazy enemies, wild weapons, and strange humor. It promises a mix of action, RPG elements, and deep storytelling, all with a heavy dose of retro style. Think Yakuza meets Dead Rising, with a ton of weird energy. This game feels like it's doing its own thing, and honestly, that's cool. The trailers are chaotic but fun. It's colorful, fast, and full of charm. But also, it looks a little unpolished. Some animations are stiff, and the combat might get repetitive if they don't balance things well. And while the world is unique, it could easily become too random if there's no solid story to hold it together. It's risky, but it might end up being one of those cult classics, the kind of game people either love or totally ignore. Now, we go from neon chaos to a darker, gritty setting in the UK. Let's talk about God Save Birmingham. God Save Birmingham is a dark, survival horror game set in a post-apocalyptic UK. It's not your typical zombie or monster game. It's more grounded and emotional. You play as survivors navigating a collapsed society, dealing with tough moral choices and trying to stay alive. It promises a strong story, real consequences, and a heavy focus on player choices. The setting is gritty, the music is eerie, and the atmosphere feels heavy in all the right ways. But this one is flying way under the radar. There's not a lot of marketing or hype, which usually means one of of two things. Either it's a hidden gem, or it's going to release with bugs and little polish. From what's shown, it looks like the game's heart is in the right place. But some previews mention dated visuals and unclear combat mechanics. If it nails the emotional weight and gives us solid survival systems, it could be a surprise hit. But if it leans too much into slow pacing without good gameplay, it might not hold attention for long. And now, let's move on from the ruined streets of Birmingham to a darker kind of lab horror. Daymare 1994 Sandcastle is up next. Daymare 1994. Sandcastle is a prequel to Daymare 1998. It's a third-person survival horror game that throws you into creepy labs, military facilities, and tight hallways filled with terrifying creatures. You play as Delilah Reyes, a special agent sent on a mission that quickly turns into a nightmare. It promises old-school horror like Resident Evil, with tough enemies, limited ammo, and a strong focus on atmosphere. The frost weapon is a cool twist. You can freeze enemies before shooting them, which adds a bit of strategy. Here's the real deal though. It looks great, and the horror is definitely there, but the voice acting is still stiff. The story can get confusing, and some parts of the gameplay feel outdated. Inventory management is annoying at times, and enemies can become more frustrating than scary. It's better than the original in many ways, and fans of classic horror games will enjoy it. But if you're looking for deep story or smooth gameplay, it might not hit the mark. Let's leave the icy halls and move into a stylish nightmare in the Midnight Walkers. The Midnight Walkers is a fresh take on survival horror with a top-down perspective and a unique visual style. Set in a cursed world filled with twisted creatures, you walk through darkness with just a flashlight and a lot of guts. It promises a mix of slow tension, exploration, and sudden terror. The visuals are creepy in a stylish way, not realistic, but still disturbing. The game wants you to feel like every step could be your last. Honestly, the concept is cool, and it really leans into atmosphere. But it's also an indie game, and you can feel that in the gameplay. It's a little rough around the edges, movement isn't perfect, and combat is super basic. Sometimes the style over substance feeling kicks in, where it looks cool but plays a bit slow or empty. Still, it's different, and that's worth something. If you like horror that's more about mood than mechanics, this is worth checking out. From shadows to fog, let's head into Holstin, a game soaked in mystery. Holstin is a Polish horror game with a top-down view and an incredibly detailed 2D style. It's set in a small town that's slowly being taken over by a mysterious infection. You explore buildings, talk to strange locals, and fight creepy monsters as you try to find out what happened. It promises deep story, puzzle solving, and dynamic camera angles that shift when action happens, kind of blending 2D and 3D in a creative way. The good part? It's one of the most unique horror games this year. The town feels alive in a creepy way. The writing is solid, and the camera system actually works well. It feels like old-school Silent Hill mixed with some fresh ideas. But again, it's an indie project, so don't expect AAA polish. Some parts feel slow, and combat might not satisfy players looking for fast action. Still, the mystery, setting, and style give it a real identity. Now, for the final game on the list, Projekt Z Beyond Order. A zombie co-op shooter set in World War II, where you and your team fight off waves of undead Nazis on a mysterious island. You pick characters with unique abilities and complete missions while surviving the horror. It promises intense shooting, rich backstories, and a strong focus on team play. Visually, it looks decent, gritty, dark, and filled with creepy vibes, but the concern is whether it'll bring anything new. If it doesn't find its own identity, either through story or gameplay, it could feel like just another Left 4 Dead clone. Some early previews mention bugs, clunky AI, and missions that feel a bit repetitive. Still, it could be fun with friends, especially if the devs keep polishing and add variety to missions and enemies. It has potential, but it needs to push harder to stand out. Speaking of potential, these were 20 zombie games. Some were wild, some were weird, but all of them have got people talking. If any of these got you hyped, check out the channel. I post new videos every day, breaking down even more hidden gems and upcoming games you might have missed. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one before the zombies do.